You thought their intensity was passion. You mistook their recklessness for desire, their need for danger as proof of how deeply they felt. But what you witnessed wasn't love. It was addiction dressed in skin. They weren't connecting with you. They were chasing a high, the intoxicating rush of control, novelty, and conquest. And the bedroom? It wasn't a sanctuary. It was their arena. Today, we expose the dark truth. Narcissists aren't addicted to sex. They re-addicted to the power it gives them. And you are just the latest dose. Picture this. Whispered requests that cross your lines, sudden escalations that leave you breathless not from pleasure, but from panic. They don't ask, they suggest, they pressure, they perform. And all of it, the urgency, the risk, the drama, isn't about you. It is about feeding a hunger that has nothing to do with intimacy and everything to do with domination. You weren't a lover. You were a vehicle for their escape. Why does this haunt you? Because the line between thrill and violation blurred so quietly. One moment you're swept up in their magnetism. The next you're wondering why you feel used, exposed, even ashamed, yet unable to name what went wrong. That's the trap. Their passion mimics real desire so perfectly, you mistake exploitation for connection. But real love doesn't leave you feeling like you've survived a storm. It leaves you feeling safe. You weren't chosen for your depth. You were selected for your accessibility, your empathy, your willingness to trust, your belief that love means saying yes. And they weaponized that. They turned your generosity into permission, your silence into consent, your body into a playground for their addiction. Not because they craved you, but because they craved the high of pushing limits and watching you yield. This isn't about morality. It's about mechanics. The narcissist's brain is wired for stimulation, not stillness. For drama, not depth. Risky intimacy floods their system with dopamine, not from closeness, but from the illusion of power. Every boundary crossed, every rule bent, every gasp you let out. It's all data confirming they're still in control. And control is the only thing that silences the void inside them. That intensity you felt, it wasn't connection, it was performance. A carefully choreographed show designed to elicit awe, not vulnerability. They don't want to know your inner world, they want to stage it. Your body becomes the set, your reactions the script, their ego the director. And if you deviate, if you hesitate, the performance turns cold. Because a real partner can't be directed, only a prop can. You felt confused, guilty, even boring for wanting safety over sensation. That's not your flaw, that's their design. They made you believe that true passion requires danger, that love means never playing it safe. But that's not love. That's addiction masquerading as romance. And addiction doesn't care about your comfort. It only cares about its next hit. This video isn't here to shame you. It's here to awaken you, to reframe every time you minimized your discomfort, every time you gave in to avoid conflict, every time you told yourself, maybe this is just how they are. No, this is how addicts are. And their addiction doesn't love you, it uses you to survive. The most dangerous lie they sold you? That their risky behavior was proof of how much they wanted you. But wanting someone doesn't mean disregarding their limits. Love honors safety. It doesn't treat it as weakness. You deserved reverence, not recklessness. Presence, not performance. Intimacy, not adrenaline. So let S pull back the curtain on this silent addiction. How narcissists use sex and risky behavior not to bond, but to bypass their own emptiness. Because once you see the machinery behind the madness, you'll never mistake their hunger for love again. At the core of this addiction lies a terrifying truth. The narcissist feels nothing without external stimulation. Their inner world is so barren, so silent, that they need constant intensity just to feel alive. And sex, especially risky, boundary-pushing sex, becomes the ultimate drug. Not for pleasure, but for proof. Proof that they still have power, proof that they matter, proof that they exist. Their psychology is built on a paradox. They crave admiration, but fear true closeness. So they engineer intimacy that's physically intense, but emotionally sterile. Risk becomes the perfect tool, because danger creates adrenaline, and adrenaline mimics connection. But it's a counterfeit. A chemical illusion that fools both of you, until the high fades and the emptiness returns, louder than before. They don't experience pleasure the way you do. Their arousal is laced with control. Their touch isn't exploration, it's conquest. Every escalation, every whispered suggestion that edges toward your limits is a test. Will they still yield? Your compliance isn't love. It's confirmation that their performance still works. And that confirmation is the oxygen their ego breathes. This is why they escalate quickly. Speed bypasses discernment. If they can get you into high-stimulus scenarios before your mind questions, you're trapped in a loop where sensation overrides suspicion. You mistake urgency for devotion, intensity for depth, and while you're lost in the feeling, they're counting their wins. Another boundary crossed, another source secured. They fear boredom like death, and true intimacy includes boredom, the quiet moments, the mundane, the stillness. But stillness demands presence. Presence demands vulnerability. And vulnerability is the one thing their entire identity was built to avoid. So they chase risk, not for fun, but for survival. Because without the high, they feel nothing. And feeling nothing is worse than pain. Their addiction isn't to you, it's to the version of you that never says no. The version that gasps, surrenders, and never asks for safety. That version doesn't exist. But they'll punish the real you for failing to become it. Because the real you has limits. The real you has a soul, and souls can't be used without consequence. They cannot tolerate stillness with a real person. Stillness demands authenticity. Authenticity demands self. And the narcissist has no self, only a collection of masks. So they fill every quiet moment with drama, risk, and urgency, not to connect, but to drown out the echo of their own emptiness. Your body becomes their noise-canceling headphones. Your physical presence is their anti-anxiety medication. Not because they're bonded to you, but because you stabilize the fiction they live inside. Like any addict, they'll manipulate, charm, or guilt trip to keep the supply flowing, even if it costs you your peace, your boundaries, your sense of self. They don't see your exhaustion. They only see the opening you create when you pull away. This isn't malice. It's trauma wearing a crown of control. Their behavior was forged in childhood, where their worth was tied to performance, not personhood. But understanding their wound doesn't obligate you to bleed for it. You were never meant to be their cure, you were meant to be your own sanctuary. So remember, when they push for risk, they're not loving you. They're feeding, and your body is not a playground, it's a sacred space, and anyone who treats it as a venue for their addiction never deserved access to begin with. The turning point comes the moment you say, no more. Not with anger, but with calm resolve. And in that instant, their system crashes, because you've disrupted the supply line. You've refused to be the next dose. And a narcissist without supply doesn't just feel rejected, they feel annihilated. Because without you yielding, they face the one thing they can't survive: themselves. Watch how quickly passion curdles into punishment. One day you're their thrill seeker, the next you're boring, prudish, or emotionally closed off. Why? Because you stopped being a prop and became a person. And persons have boundaries. Persons threaten the very foundation of their false self, so they retaliate, not with honesty, but with distortion. They'll gaslight you into believing your desire for safety is weakness. Your request for respect is control. Your need for peace is dullness. All while they continue to chase risk, now with someone new, someone still willing to feed their hunger. But don't mistake their new conquest for victory. It's just another symptom of their addiction. This is the twist. Their love wasn't lost. It never existed. What vanished was your usefulness as a compliant source. The moment you sought emotional safety, you became a liability, because real intimacy would require them to be vulnerable. And vulnerability is the one thing their entire identity was built to avoid. They'll hoover you with sudden bursts of vulnerability. A tear, a confession, a late-night message saying, "I miss our fire." But don't mistake this for growth, it's recalibration. They're retesting if your boundaries have softened enough to let them back in, so they can resume their quiet campaign of pressure. This isn't healing, it's supply maintenance. Don't confuse their panic for remorse. Their fear isn't about hurting you, it's about losing access to your compliance. You're not a person to them in that moment. You be a resource they were scrambling to reclaim before their ego collapses under the weight of its own emptiness. This is where real power shifts, not with a fight, but with stillness. The day you stop justifying your need for safety. The day you realize your boundaries need no explanation, they simply are. You don't have to earn the right to protect your body. You were born with it. And that truth makes you untouchable. They'll rage, they'll smear, they'll claim you killed the spark. But projection is their last defense, because deep down, they know they used you. And your calm refusal to be used again is the first honest thing you've ever given them. And it terrifies them more than any confrontation ever could. You are no longer their compliant subject. You are your own sovereign. And that shift, from object to authority, sends shockwaves through their fragile ecosystem. Because a self-possessed you cannot be manipulated, a grounded you cannot be guilted, and a boundaried you forces them to face the one thing they've spent a lifetime avoiding, their own powerlessness. This turning point isn't just your liberation. It's their reckoning. For the first time, they must face the truth. They can mimic love, but they cannot create it. And without someone to override, they are nothing but static in the dark. A ghost haunting a body that never learned how to respect another's soul. Now, observe the collapse. Without your compliance, their charisma dulls. Their charm feels rehearsed. New targets sense the hunger beneath the polish, the subtle panic when their advances meet resistance. Because authenticity can't be faked forever. And you were the last great illusion that held their performance together. They'll cycle faster, jumping from person to person, testing boundaries early, discarding quickly when met with firm no's. But it's never the same, because you weren't just another source. You were the one who saw their pattern and still had the courage to say no. And that courage haunts them. Their social mask begins to slip. Friends notice the pattern, the sudden coldness after a partner sets a limit, the smear campaigns, the way they label anyone with boundaries as crazy or controlling. Lovers sense the emptiness behind the passion, the mechanical nature of their advances, the absence of true respect. Internally, they're in freefall. No amount of compliance silences the voice that whispers, "You're empty." The void you once masked with your surrender is now roaring. Because the void isn't about sex, it's about self, and they still have no answer to the question that haunts them every night. Who am I if no one yields to me? They'll rewrite history, claiming you were manipulative for setting boundaries, toxic for protecting yourself. Not because it's true, but because your truth exposes their fraud. If they can destroy your credibility, they can restore their illusion of victimhood. It's not about justice, it's about survival. But truth is louder than their lies. Every survivor who walks away chips away at their facade. Every boundary you set becomes a crack in their armor. And slowly, the world stops feeding them and starts seeing them, not as the passionate lover they pretend to be, but as the boundary-violating predator they've always been. Their collapse isn't dramatic, it's quiet. A slow fade into irrelevance as people choose authenticity over performance. As lovers choose respect over pressure. As friends choose consistency over chaos. The market for their illusion dries up, because the truth is finally trending. They'll never understand why you left. Because in their narrative, they gave you everything: passion, attention, devotion. But you didn't want their performance. You wanted safety. You wanted someone who could hold you without needing to override you. Someone whose love didn't vanish the moment you said no. Their tragedy is not yours to carry. Let them spiral in the silence they created. Let them face the mirror without your compliance. Because your freedom begins the moment you stop being the answer to their existential crisis. You were never responsible for filling their void. You were only ever responsible for protecting your light. And as they search desperately for their next compliant target, recycling your lines, mimicking your tenderness, using your vulnerability as a blueprint for their next conquest, you're doing something radical, rebuilding yourself. Not for an audience, not for validation, but because you finally believe you are worth more than pressure. Here is the final truth. Your boundaries are not walls. They are wings, and anyone who treats your no as a personal offense never deserved access to your yes. Your body is not a negotiation table. It is a sanctuary, and you are its sole guardian. Anyone who refuses to honor that is not a lover. They are an intruder. Real love doesn't push, it asks. It doesn't punish your boundaries, it protects them. It doesn't drain your energy, it returns it, multiplied. It doesn't use your body to hide from emptiness. It meets you in your fullness, scars and all, and says, your no is as sacred as your yes. Healing begins when you stop apologizing for protecting yourself. When you stop justifying your right to bodily autonomy. When you realize that someone who treats your boundaries as obstacles will never treat your heart as a treasure. You were not broken because they violated you. You were brilliant because you survived, and wiser because you walked away. You are not damaged goods. You are a reclaimed sanctuary. Every time you say no, you rebuild a wall around your inner temple. Every time you choose yourself over their craving, you honor the truth that your worth was never up for negotiation. Let them call you difficult. What they really mean is, you're no longer feeding me. And that's not a flaw, it's your freedom. Let their hunger remain their prison. You are free to love someone who doesn't need to override you to feel whole. Someone whose touch doesn't leave you emptier, but fuller, calmer, more yourself. Someone who doesn't see your body as a trophy to be won, but as a sacred part of your humanity to be honored. Every time you choose yourself over their craving, you reclaim a piece of your power. Every no is a resurrection. Every boundary is a declaration. I am not here to be overridden. I am here to stand. You are not selfish for protecting your energy. You are sovereign, and sovereignty terrifies narcissists because it exposes the lie they've besold the world, that they are powerful. One day, you'll lie beside someone who holds you without needing to conquer you, who sees your body not as a challenge to be overcome, but as a testament to your resilience, who doesn't flinch when you speak your truth, but leans in closer. And in that moment, you'll finally understand what real intimacy feels like. Not pressure, but peace. Not performance, but presence. Not coercion, but choice. You were never the problem. You were the mirror that showed them their emptiness, and they broke the glass rather than face the truth. But you survived the shattering, and from those shards you didn't just rebuild, you evolved. You transformed pain into clarity, betrayal into boundaries, confusion into conviction. Your future belongs to someone who doesn't just want your warmth, but protects your flame. Who doesn't just admire your body, but defends your dignity. Who knows that love isn't taken through pressure, it's given. And only when both souls are fully present, fully free, and fully respected. It is a home. And the moment you stop letting narcissists invade it under the guise of passion, you finally come home to yourself. Not as a victim, not as a survivor, but as a sovereign being who knows love should never cost you your boundaries. Because you are not here to be overridden. You are here to live. Fully. Finally. Free.